Welcome to the show, everybody. We're about to dive into some seriously dark territory today, the top 10 most dangerous prisons on the planet. We're not talking about your run-of-the-mill lockup. These places are on a whole other level. We're talking about brutal conditions, violence that would make your stomach turn, and a level of despair that's hard to even imagine. These are the kind of places where survival is a daily battle, where the guards are often as corrupt as the inmates, and where even the toughest criminals fear for their lives. We're going to take you inside the walls of these notorious institutions, explore the stories behind their brutal reputations, and try to understand what life is really like in these human warehouses. Buckle up, folks, because this is going to be a wild ride. Viewer discretion is strongly advised. First up, we're heading down to Venezuela to a place called La Sabaneta Prison. This place is basically a powder keg of violence just waiting to explode. It's insanely overcrowded, with thousands of inmates crammed into a space designed for a fraction of that number. You've got rival gangs running the show inside, fighting for control of whatever scraps of power they can get their hands on. The guards? Let's just say they're either outmatched or outright complicit in the chaos. There's a reason they call this place the five-star hellhole. We're talking about a place where machetes and homemade shanks are the weapons of choice, where riots erupt with the slightest provocation, leaving dozens dead and wounded. In 1994, a riot broke out that left over 100 inmates dead. Think about that, 100 people killed in a single incident. And it's not just the violence you have to worry about. Disease runs rampant in La Sabaneta, sanitation is non-existent, food is scarce. It's like something out of a dystopian nightmare. What's crazy is that La Sabaneta is just the tip of the iceberg. There are countless prisons like it around the world where the line between order and chaos is razor thin. Next, we're going to Africa, to Rwanda, to a place called Gitarama Prison. If you thought La Sabaneta was bad, strap in, because Gitarama is on a whole other level of human misery. This place was built for, get this, 600 inmates. Sounds almost reasonable, right? Wrong. At its peak, Gitarama housed over 7,000 prisoners. You can't even imagine the kind of depravity that comes with that level of overcrowding. Imagine being packed so tightly into a space that you can barely move. You're standing in your own filth, breathing in the stench of sweat, excrement, and disease. There's no room to lie down, no room to breathe. People are literally dying standing up in this place. Food is scarce, water even more so. Disease spreads like wildfire. And if the elements don't get you, the other inmates will. Violence is a fact of life in Gitarama. It's a fight for survival, every single day. It's hard to even fathom the level of desperation that exists in a place like Gitarama. It's a slow, agonizing death sentence. And it's a stark reminder of the dark side of humanity. For this next one, we're going back in time to Brazil, to a place called Carandiru Penitentiary. This place was shut down in 2002, but its legacy of violence and brutality lives on. Carandiru was notorious for its horrific conditions. Overcrowding, disease, gang violence, it had it all. But what really put this place on the map was the 1992 massacre. On October 2, 1992, a riot broke out in the prison. The guards, overwhelmed and outmatched, called in the military police. What happened next was a bloodbath. The police stormed the prison, guns blazing, and opened fire on the inmates. When the smoke cleared, 111 prisoners were dead. Many of them were unarmed, executed in cold blood. The Carandiru massacre shocked the world and exposed the brutal reality of the Brazilian prison system. It's a reminder that even in the supposed safety of a prison, nowhere is safe when the authorities themselves become the perpetrators of violence. Next up, we're heading to Russia, to a place that will send chills down your spine, Black Dolphin Prison. This place is the final destination for Russia's most hardened criminals, serial killers, terrorists, the worst of the worst. Black Dolphin is all about isolation and control. Inmates spend 23 hours a day locked in their cells, with only a brief hour for exercise in a slightly larger cage. They're under constant surveillance, their every move watched by guards. Communication with the outside world is practically non-existent. Visits are rare and closely monitored. It's a lonely, soul-crushing existence. But the real horror of Black Dolphin lies in the psychological torture. The isolation, the lack of human contact, the constant surveillance, it all takes a toll on the human psyche. It's a slow, agonizing descent into madness. We're going to Turkey now, to a place that has been called one of the worst prisons in the world, Diyarbakir Prison. This place is synonymous with human rights abuses, torture, and unspeakable cruelty. Diyarbakir was originally built to house political prisoners, and the conditions have always been notoriously harsh. Overcrowding, lack of hygiene, and inadequate medical care are just the tip of the iceberg. What sets Diyarbakir apart is the systematic use of torture. Inmates have reported beatings, sexual abuse, and psychological torment at the hands of the guards. It's a place where human dignity goes to die. The international community has repeatedly condemned the conditions in Diyarbakir, but little has changed. It remains a stain on the conscience of humanity. We're back in the US for this next one, to a place that has been called the Alcatraz of the Rockies, ADX Florence. This supermax prison is the final destination for America's most dangerous criminals. ADX Florence is all about isolation. Inmates spend 23 hours a day locked in their cells, with minimal human contact. The cells are soundproof, designed to prevent any communication between prisoners. Exercise is limited to an hour a day in a concrete pit, open to the sky but surrounded by high walls. The only glimpse of the outside world these prisoners get is a sliver of sky. The psychological toll of this kind of isolation is immense. Many inmates suffer from depression, anxiety, and even psychosis, ADX. Florence is a testament to the idea that the worst punishment is often the absence of human connection. We're back in the US for this next one, to a place that has become synonymous with brutality and despair, Rikers Island. This notorious jail complex in New York City has a long and troubled history. Rikers has been plagued by violence, corruption, and inhumane conditions for decades. Overcrowding, gang activity, and a culture of violence have made it one of the most dangerous jails in America. In recent years, Rikers has faced intense scrutiny for its treatment of inmates, particularly those with mental health issues. The use of solitary confinement, often for extended periods, has been widely condemned. Despite efforts to reform the jail, Rikers remains a symbol of everything that is wrong with the American criminal justice system. It's a place where hope goes to die and where the cycle of violence seems to have no end. And finally, we're ending our journey back in Venezuela, at a place that embodies the brutal reality of the country's prison system, El Rodeo Prison. This place is pure chaos. El Rodeo is controlled by heavily armed gangs who operate with impunity. The guards have little to no control over what happens inside the prison walls. It's a war zone, plain and simple. Riots and violence are commonplace. In 2011, a massive riot broke out that lasted for weeks, leaving dozens dead and hundreds injured. The Venezuelan government was forced to send in the military to regain control. El Rodeo is a stark reminder that in some parts of the world, prisons are not places of rehabilitation, but rather breeding grounds for violence and despair. It's a sobering thought to end on. Let's head over to Thailand now, to a place called Bang Kwang Central Prison. They call it the Bangkok Hilton, but trust me, it's about as far from a luxury hotel as you can get. This place is notorious for its brutal conditions. We're talking about extreme heat, cramped cells, and a level of hygiene that would make your skin crawl. And that's before we even get to the punishments. In Bang Kwang, it's not uncommon for prisoners to be shackled or kept in solitary confinement for months, even years on end. Food is scarce and often inedible. Medical care is practically non-existent. And if you thought the guards were there to help, think again. Corruption is rampant, and brutality is the norm. Inmates live in constant fear of both the guards and each other. The Bangkok Hilton is a place where hope goes to die. It's a stark reminder that even in the so-called land of smiles, darkness lurks in the shadows. Get ready for a wild one, folks, because we're heading to Bolivia, to a place that defies all expectations, San Pedro Prison. This place is unique in that it's essentially a self-governing city within a prison. In San Pedro, there are no guards inside the prison walls. The inmates run the show, enforcing their own laws and maintaining their own social order. It's a bizarre mix of chaos and community. Prisoners have to pay for their cells, with the wealthiest living in relative luxury while the poorest languish in squalor. There's a thriving internal economy with inmates running businesses, selling goods, and even offering services like restaurants and barbershops. But don't let the semblance of normalcy fool you. Violence is still a fact of life in San Pedro. Drug use is rampant and gangs wield considerable power. It's a dangerous and unpredictable environment. So there you have it, folks, a glimpse into the darkest corners of the world's prison system. It's a lot to process, I know. These stories are tough to hear, but they're important. We need to shine a light on these places, on the injustices and suffering that happen behind these walls. It makes you think about the nature of punishment, about rehabilitation, about the very essence of humanity. These are human beings, after all, locked away in these concrete jungles. Thanks for sticking with me on this heavy journey. If you found this video eye-opening, hit that like button and share it with your friends. And until next time, stay curious, stay informed, and stay safe out there. Thanks for watching our countdown of the top 10 deadliest prisons in the world. If you found this video informative, please like, share, and subscribe for more content. Stay safe.